the Deputy Cuban Ambassador to the UN, Ana Silvia Rodríguez. It's an honor to have you here. The mic is yours.
It's for us an honor to be here today in the launching of the 30th Caravan of Pastor for Peace. This year is not business as usual. You can see the increasing, not only in the rhetoric, aggressive rhetoric of the U.S. government against Cuba, but also you are seeing that new measures have been taken in order to strengthen the embargo to Cuba. They are doing that thinking that they are going to have concession from our part. But they have not learned over these 60 years of the Cuban Revolution. 60 years they have to learn, and they haven't learned. Maybe it's because they measure us as they measure them. At this time, they should learn that we are not going to give any concession. Cuban people stand in its principle and in its position. So, if they learn from the Cuban history, the father of our homeland, Carlos Manuel de Céspedes, the Spaniards asked him, they are going to free his son in order that he surrender. And he said, no, I am the father of all the Cubans, and he didn't surrender. His son was killed by the Spaniards. And this is the example that all Cubans live, those examples. So I would like to ask all the members of the Pastor for Peace and all the members of the Solidarity Movement to Cuba to go in the caravan, because the caravan this year is really important. Not only for the Cuban people, that Cuban people are very thankful for all these 30 years, almost 30 years of the caravan, 27 years, and also because you have to send a message for the American people, and not only for the American people, the American government, but also send a message to all over the world, that the Solidarity Movement still stands with Cuba, and the Solidarity Movement from US, and this is very important, from the United States, that you are against the new policy, the aggressive policy of the Trump government against my country. So I thank you once again for your solidarity over all this year. I thank you for the commitment and the support that you are giving to the Cuban people. And we are here with you to support the caravan in any way possible. I bring some written notes. I'm not feel very comfortable sometimes speaking in English. Gail, I'm going to give you a hint. I put my letter Arial 18. Dear Sister Gail Walker, brothers and sisters, it's an honor for me to be here today representing the revolutionary and supportive Cuba, friend of the just causes of the world. On behalf of my people, I thank you for this new gesture of brotherhood and support for my country. I reiterate the commitment of our revolution to continue fighting against imperialism, neoliberalism, against the selfishness, racism, and social exclusion that marks the capitalist system, against an economic, political, social, and cultural paradigm that privilege the accumulation of wealth in a few hands and the expense of the exploitation and misery of the great majority. And we do so because that is the basis of our patriotism, our socialism, and our internationalism, as expressed in the comprehensive concept of revolution bequeathed to us by Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro, which guide us to continue building a dignified, independent, and sovereign homeland as dreamed by our heroes and martyrs. I am part of a generation of Cuba who grew up and was formed under the criminal, economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed by the government of the United States that is not only maintained but has recently worsened in full disregard of the opinion of the international community. I am also part of the generation that has known and lived what the word of solidarity means. We all remember the year 1992, when the revolution was going through one of the most difficult moments in its history. It was then when all Cubans felt the support and love of the American people from the hands of the unforgettable and beloved friend, Reverend Lucius Walker. Through the first Pastor for Peace Caravan, I personally remember the yellow buses that burst into Havana with their emblematic paintings. There have been many hardships and sacrifices that hundreds of caravanistas have had to go through during these 27 years of challenging journeys. It is impossible to forget what happened in 1993 with the small yellow bus and his crew in Laredo, Texas, who went on hunger strike for 23 days to protect and prevent the vehicle and other items intended for the Cuban people from being confiscated by U.S. authorities. 27 years later, the caravan remains vibrant and ready to continue supporting the Cuban people and defying the aggressive policy that the Trump administration has decided to carry on against Cuba. As you all know, new measures that tighten the blockade, well, the previous speaker already mentioned, have been put into effect, including the application of Title III of Helms-Burton Act. This law pursued to suffocate the Cuban economy by means of brutal and illegal pressure of the United States against third countries, their governments, and their companies. Those who promote this action have openly declared that their objectives include, and I open quotes, reversing the consequence of the disastrous policies of the Obama era, end of quoting, and imposing a regime change on the Cuban people. Just a few hours ago, they further reinforced the already harsh restriction to U.S. citizens traveling to Cuba, adding total bans on vessels of all kinds coming from the U.S. and immediately prohibiting cruise ships from visiting our country. I don't know what they are afraid. I think that they are afraid that the American people know the real of Cuba, know about the Cuban Revolution, know about our people. But all of us know that the truth cannot be hid. And the truth is going to open the path of. So in order to justify their action, the Trump administration resorts to use of, well, it's common, to use the resort of the lies. As Army General Raúl Castro said recently, an open quote, in the worst style of Hitler's propaganda. Those lies systematically repeated by President Trump, a group of his most ultra-conservative officials, such as the infamous National Security Advisor John Bolton, and Cuban-born Senators Marcos Rubio and Bob Menendez. First, were the alleged acoustic attacks against against American diplomats in Havana, that it looked like outer space movie. This issue of the acoustic attack to the American diplomat. This was intended to justify the drastic reduction of diplomatic personnel in their embassy in Havana, thus putting an end to their consular services. Now, they accuse Cuba of maintaining a private army in Venezuela. Pointed out that the more than 20,000 Cuban doctors who are accomplishing a mission in Venezuela and have saved thousands of lives for years are soldiers who repress the people of that country. Cuba's solidarity with the constitutional president Nicolás Maduro and the Bolivarian and Chavista revolution is non-negotiable. The Cuban workers who are providing social services in that country, most of them from the health sector, will remain there as long as the Venezuelan people welcome them. Cubans have fought for nearly 150 years for national independence, sacrificing a lot of blood and taking great risk. That is why any strategy aimed at destroying the revolution by means of confrontation or seduction will face the most resolute rejection of the Cuban people and will be doomed to failure. Cuba will not allow itself to be intimidated or frightened by new threats and restrictions. They have not been able to suffocate us. They will not be able to stop us. We will live up and triumph. As I say at the beginning, and today more than ever, we require the altruistic work that people like you, all of you, do in support of the Cuban revolution. The revolution that is not only a Cuban revolution, it's a revolution all of us who believe that a more just society is possible. The work of the Caravanistas and their travels of defiance must continue as banner of the solidarity of the American people with our country. Now that we are launching the 2019 Friendshipment Caravan, our best tribute to you can be no other than to continue fighting, inspired by your example. Our best tribute to you and the memory of Lucho's workers can be no other than to continue defending our socialism in Cuba and fighting against the blockade. I would like to conclude by quoting our Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro when he said, talking about the Caravanistas, and open quote, "The Caravanistas have been so noble as to express that they came here to ask for forgiveness for what the neighbor of the North was doing. But we say that the people of the United States, you are the people of the United States, will never have to ask for forgiveness for anything from the people of Cuba, because we have never confused the American people with those responsible for the acts and hostility, aggression, and cruelty that have been committed and that are still committed against our people." So we know very well who is who in America. So long live the friendship and the solidarity between the people of Cuba and the United States. Long live. Long live Lucho's Walker and the Caravan for Peace. Long live Fidel and his legacy to the revolutionaries of the world. Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Abajo. Patria o muerte, venceremos.
Well, we just want to thank the Deputy Ambassador for being here. You spoke so eloquently about the strength of Cuba, the example of resistance, the belief that we collectively can build a more just society, and that's why we need Cuba, and that's why we're here, and you will always be able to count on Cuba's friends.